The cold concrete walls of the prison had been my home for the past 7 years. I wasn't always this way, but life has a way of pushing you to places you never imagined. It was one of those mornings, dark, quiet, with only the distant sounds of doors slamming shut, and the muffled voices of inmates echoing through the halls. As I sat on the edge of my cot, I couldn't help but think back to the world outside these walls. The one I lost, my family, my friends, my freedom. All of it was now reduced to memories, like faded photographs in a box somewhere. I'm John. 34 years old. A prisoner in a high-security facility. But there's more to me than the crimes I've committed. I've always been told that people are defined by their choices, but I've come to believe that sometimes, those choices aren't entirely ours. Still, that doesn't change the fact that I'm here. I made my bed, now I have to lie in it. But as much as I tried to forget about the outside world, there was one thing that kept pulling me back. Her. Officer Cynthia. A female warden at the prison. Strong, disciplined, with a no-nonsense attitude. She walked through the halls like she owned them. Every step, calculated. Every word, deliberate. But there was something about the way she looked at me during our brief exchanges, something that made my heart race and my mind wander. I couldn't deny it. I was drawn to her, but I knew it was a dangerous thought, a thought I shouldn't have. Prison is a place where everything is about control over your thoughts, your actions, your emotions. You can't afford to show weakness, especially not here, where every moment feels like a test. But as I saw Officer Cynthia walk by my cell again that morning, something stirred within me. Maybe it was the way her boots clicked against the floor, or the way her uniform fit her so perfectly, but whatever it was, it made me feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. I wasn't the only one who noticed. The other inmates watched her too, their eyes following her every move. But I wasn't like them. I wasn't just interested in her physical appearance. There was something deeper, something about the way she carried herself, the strength in her presence. I couldn't explain it, but I knew that she was different. I've been in prison long enough to know how the system works, and I've seen all kinds of people come and go, wardens, officers, and inmates alike. But Officer Cynthia was different. She wasn't like the others who treated us as though we were less than human. No, she had a certain kindness in her eyes, a softness that contradicted the hard exterior she wore. I'd catch glimpses of her in the yard, standing by the gate, talking to the other officers, her voice firm but not without empathy. Sometimes, our eyes would meet, and for a fleeting second, I'd see something in her expression. Was it curiosity? Pity? Or maybe something more? I couldn't be sure, but I wanted to know. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how foolish I was. A prisoner and a warden, a connection between us was impossible. She had a job to do, and I was just another inmate here, serving my time for the things I had done. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. I'm not proud of it, but sometimes, I'd find myself daydreaming about what could have been. What if I hadn't ended up here? What if I had met Officer Cynthia in a different life, a life where I wasn't confined to a cell? But life isn't like that, and I knew better than to entertain such fantasies. The world we lived in, this concrete jungle, had no place for dreams. It only had rules. But still, I couldn't help myself. The pull toward her was too strong. The days went by, and every time I saw her, I felt that familiar rush in my chest. I didn't know where it was leading, but I knew one thing, the connection between us was undeniable. Thank you, my viewers, for taking the time to watch and listen to my story. Your support means the world to me. If you're finding my story engaging, I encourage you to like and leave your thoughts and comments. It helps me stay motivated and gives me the courage to keep sharing my truth with you. I know you'll want to know more interesting things that happened while I was at the prison. The days seemed to blend into one another, a monotonous cycle of routine and silence. The prison walls, once intimidating and cold, had become oddly familiar. But even within this chaos, there were moments of clarity. Moments where time seemed to slow down, where my mind wandered to places it shouldn't have. Officer Cynthia was often on my mind, and each time she walked past my cell, something within me stirred. I tried to suppress it, to keep my focus on surviving this place, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. I've seen people lose themselves in prison, to give in to the madness, to let the isolation break them. But I wasn't like that. At least, I didn't think I was. I was determined to stay strong, to remain a man with purpose, even if my purpose was to serve my time and nothing more. Yet, Officer Richards made me question everything. I'd caught her looking at me more than once, her eyes meeting mine just for a split second before quickly looking away. It wasn't much, but it was enough to stir something deep within me. I couldn't ignore it any longer. The attraction, the pull toward her. It wasn't just physical, it was something deeper, something I couldn't explain. There was something in the way she carried herself. The way she commanded respect without even speaking. She didn't need to raise her voice to be heard. She had this calm, composed energy that stood out among the other officers. But it wasn't just her strength that drew me in. It was the moments when I saw glimpses of vulnerability, when her guard would slip ever so slightly, showing me the woman behind the uniform. It was during the weekly exercise period when I first saw her outside the normal prison environment. The inmates were allowed to walk around the yard, some pacing back and forth, others working out, while the officers kept a close watch. Officer Cynthia was standing by the gate, speaking to a fellow officer, but her gaze kept drifting toward me. For a moment, I thought I imagined it, but when our eyes met, I saw it, something soft in her eyes, something that wasn't just professional. It was a look that, for a brief instant, seemed almost human. My heart raced. I had to look away, unable to hold her gaze any longer. I knew what this was forbidden, a line that shouldn't be crossed. A prison is a place where you lose all sense of normalcy, and attachments are nothing but distractions. But there was something undeniable between us, a connection that I couldn't shake off. Over the next few weeks, those small moments became more frequent. Officer Cynthia would pass by my cell, and our eyes would meet, each time, just a little longer than before. There was no conversation, no words exchanged. It was all in the way she looked at me. She'd walk past, her boots clicking on the floor, but her eyes would linger for just a second too long, and in that moment, I could feel her struggle. Her professional demeanor was always intact, but there was something about the way she carried herself that made me wonder if I was the only one feeling this connection. One afternoon, as I was sitting in the yard, I saw her approach. It wasn't just a passing glance. She was walking directly toward me, her face unreadable, her step steady and deliberate. My heart skipped a beat as she came closer, and before I could stop myself, I stood up. The sound of her boots on the gravel grew louder, closer. "John," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Officer Cynthia," I responded, my voice betraying the tension I felt. She stopped in front of me, her eyes scanning me as if she were assessing something, maybe me, maybe herself. There was a moment of silence between us, the kind of silence that speaks volumes. Neither of us knew what to say. I didn't know if she was here because she was concerned, because of the strange moments we'd shared, or if it was just part of her duty. "I've noticed you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're different from the others." I didn't know what to say. I had always prided myself on keeping to myself, not getting involved in the petty dramas of prison life. But there was something in her voice, something that made me feel seen in a way that no one had in years. In this place, it's easy to be invisible. But with her, I felt like I mattered. "I'm just doing my time," I replied, my voice steady. But inside, my mind was racing. She studied me for a moment, her expression unreadable. "Just make sure you keep it that way," she said, her tone shifting back to that professional edge. "We don't cross lines here." And just like that, she turned and walked away, leaving me standing in the yard, 1,000 questions swirling in my mind. I wanted to shout after her, to ask what she meant, to understand the look in her eyes. But I didn't. I couldn't. She was right. We couldn't cross lines, no matter how strong the pull between us felt. This was a prison, and I was a prisoner. But something had changed. I could feel it in my chest, in the way my heart raced every time I saw her. I didn't know where this was leading, but I knew one thing for sure: there was more to this than either of us was willing to admit. The days turned into weeks, and the tension between me and Officer Cynthia grew with each passing moment. I tried to focus on my daily routine, but my mind kept drifting back to her. It was impossible to shake the feelings that had taken root inside me. No matter how hard I tried to ignore it, the pull toward her was undeniable. But at the same time, I knew I had to keep my distance. Prison was a place where lines were drawn clearly, and stepping over them could lead to dire consequences. The last thing I needed was to jeopardize my future, especially over something that felt like a fleeting moment in time. But as the days wore on, something changed. Officer Cynthia, who had once been a figure of authority and professionalism, began to soften around the edges. I couldn't explain it, but the brief exchanges between us seemed to stretch longer. Her gaze lingered a little more than before, and there were moments when her smile, though faint, felt genuine. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but I noticed it. And in a place like this, where everything is cold and calculated, those small moments of warmth were like oxygen. It was during a routine check that things started to spiral out of control. I had been in the exercise yard, walking the familiar path, trying to clear my head when I saw her again. Officer Cynthia was standing near the entrance, talking to one of the other officers. The usual stern expression was on her face, but I could see a flicker of something else, something uncertain. I wasn't sure if it was a look of concern or something deeper, but I felt it in my chest, like a heavy weight. I turned to walk away, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the way she was standing there, or maybe it was the yearning inside me to know what lay beneath the surface. Whatever it was, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I walked toward her, my heart pounding in my chest. Each step felt like a step toward something I couldn't fully understand. "Officer Cynthia," I called out, my voice steady despite the way my body was trembling. She looked up, her eyes meeting mine. For a brief moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, her lips parted as if she was about to say something, but the words never came. Instead, she nodded slightly and gestured toward the side of the yard, a silent invitation. I followed her, my mind racing. What was I doing? Why was I walking toward this forbidden moment? We stopped near the fence, the sound of the inmates around us muffled by the high walls of the prison. It was just the two of us now, and the air between us felt thick with unspoken words. "I don't know what's happening," she said, her voice low, barely above a whisper. "I've never let myself get too close to anyone here, and I won't. But with you," she trailed off, as if the words were too difficult to say aloud. I swallowed hard, my heart in my throat. "I get it," I said, my voice rough. "This is crazy. We can't do this." She nodded, her eyes clouded with conflict. "I'm a warden. You're a prisoner. There's no room for anything else here. I'm not supposed to care. But I can't help it. Every time I look at you, it's like I see something that's different. I see something that makes me feel like I'm losing control." I took a step closer, the space between us shrinking. My hand twitched at my side, aching to reach out, to touch her, to make sense of the emotions that were crashing through me like a tidal wave. But I held back. I couldn't cross that line. Not here. Not like this. "We can't," I said, my voice firm now, though my insides were torn. "If we cross this line, it won't just be the both of us who suffer. It's everything we've worked for. It's the rules, Officer Cynthia, that we can't break them." Her eyes softened, and for a moment, she looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "You don't understand, do you? I've seen so many people in this place, so many men like you. But you're different. I don't know why, but you are. I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping me. I'm just a prisoner. I'm not special. I'm just here because I screwed up. I don't believe that, she said, her voice tinged with something that sounded like regret. But maybe that's the problem. Maybe I want to believe that there's more to you than your past. Maybe I want to believe that you're not the man I think you are. I stood there, frozen, unsure of what to say next. The temptation to reach out, to tell her that I felt the same, was overwhelming. But I knew the reality of the situation. There was no future for us. Not here. Not in this place. And I could see it in her eyes, she knew it too. But even as we both stood there, facing the truth, the tension between us was undeniable. It was as if the world around us had faded away, leaving only the two of us in this moment. The prison walls that had once seemed so intimidating now felt like a cage around our emotions, trapping us both in a reality we didn't want to accept. As I turned to walk away, I couldn't shake the feeling that things had changed. Not just between us, but within me. I had crossed a line, not with her, but with myself. I had allowed myself to feel something that I wasn't supposed to feel. And in doing so, I had opened a door that I couldn't close again. Thank you so much for your continued support. Your comments and likes have been incredible, and they motivate me to keep going. This story is far from over, and I can't wait to continue this journey with you. If you're still enjoying the twists and turns, please leave your thoughts below. Your feedback means everything.